as we all know, there was a big debate which surfaced on YouTube, I believe Friday night, between Kyle Kulinski and Krystal and Briahna Joy Gray on the question of voting Cornel West or Joe Biden in the general election. It really kind of turned into a referendum on whether or not people on the left should vote for Biden. There wasn't a whole lot of talk about Cornel specifically, and almost none of it actually in the clips that I chose to highlight. But we have a lot of video to play. We have 5 different portions of this that I chose to highlight. And so we'll get started here. The first is Kyle making his case for Joe Biden 2024. And Russell, if you want to jump in at any time, just say pause it. You know what I mean? We'll just kind of swing it. But I'm going to try to let as we've discussed offline, we're going to try to let it breathe a little bit, as they say in the business. Let it breathe, right?
We're going to let it breathe. Got to pull the cork.
Yeah, right. Exactly. All right, here we go. Let's get started.
And so when I look at the record, again, I can list all the bad things, but you just mentioned the NLRB.
All right, stop right there. No, I'm just kidding. Okay. Here we go.
And so when I look at the record, again, I can list all the bad things, but you just mentioned the NLRB raising overtime pay, or you mentioned the thing where, you know, they automatically recognize the union if the bosses try to bust it up. There's also the overtime pay rule where now it's not $33,000, it's about $55,000 a year, where now you get overtime pay. That's a huge, huge change. Student loan debt reduction, and even Biden coming back after the Supreme Court tried to slap it down, and he said, no, I'm going to try this.
I couldn't hear you.
He looks like an ex-pimp who manages a salad bar at this point. like, what is this with the rings and the pink shirt and the hair? It's fucking absurd. Like, you're a leftist. You're on the left. Look at you. You're a fucking joke. I'm sorry. I know we're supposed to play this through, but just looking at him, everything about you screams sellout. Everything about you screams smarmy guy who took the check. I'm sorry. As soon as I looked at him, I'm like, we're going to watch fucking a half an hour of this guy.
19 minutes. 19 minutes. I tried to keep it merciful, so here we go.
Just about $55,000 a year, where now you get overtime pay. That's a huge, huge change. Student loan debt reduction, and even Biden coming back after the Supreme Court tried to slap it down, and he said, no, I'm going to try to do it through the Higher Education Act now. There's little things we could go after him. Oh, the interest rate. Yes, that's bad. I agree with you on that. But we got to recognize that that is, all things considered, a step in the right direction. Pulling out of Afghanistan, he actually had the balls to do it, even when the media was shitting on him relentlessly. And I didn't see anybody on the left coming into his defense at that point.
I saw a lot of people of
I was like the only fucking one. It was like me and Matt Iglesias.
I definitely defended him.
Okay, so I want to pause it there because he says, I was the only one to defend him when he pulled out of Afghanistan. And even Krystal had to say, hey, you know, that's bullshit. There were a lot of us, right, who defended him on that. But listing that as an accomplishment, I'm sorry, that is bullshit of a kind on its own, because if that were step one in winding down the empire, you could say, okay, fair enough. It obviously was not, since we're up to a whole new game over in Ukraine now. That's number one. What's that?
It was shuffling around the resources.
Exactly. It was shuffling around the resources, freeing up some money and some weapons, which obviously are all going to Ukraine now. On the second point, the pulling out of Afghanistan was the real turning point for Biden in terms of his poll numbers. He was sitting mid-50s in favorability rating before that happened. And the reason that was so devastating for his polling is because just as when Mitt Romney was caught on a hot mic saying that 47% of Americans are basically takers and worthless and lazy, this moment affirmed people's worst fears about Joe Biden, right? That 47% moment for Mitt Romney was people getting a look at, oh, we always thought this guy was an out-of-touch rich prick, and now we're seeing it. Well, that Afghanistan pullout was the same sort of moment for Joe Biden, because 6 weeks before that pullout, Joe Biden is on camera staring into space talking about, oh, yeah, no, we feel very good about how the pullout's going to go. We don't even think it's necessarily a foregone conclusion that the Taliban is going to regain power. And then when you see it go down the way it did, That affirmed people's worst fears about Joe Biden, which is he's too old for this. He's not up for this.
Right.
We just saw him 6 weeks ago saying this was going to go a completely different way. Not only did he say that, but apparently he and his team were confident enough in that assessment that they did not bother evacuating the Afghani people who wanted to get out when we left, which, however you feel about the war, I don't think we should have been there in the first place. When you occupy a country for 21 fucking years, I think the least you could do is give fair warning when you're going to up and leave so that the people who want to evacuate can be evacuated. We did not do that. And so what we had was, as our planes were pulling out, you had people hanging off the side of our planes, falling to their deaths out of the sky once the plane took off. So to pitch that as a highlight of this administration is just absurd, even if you agree with the overall goal of pulling out of Afghanistan.
Not only that, okay, so two things. This is a minor point, but repeatedly Kyle asserts that he's some kind of prophet who's not listened to or some kind of victim. Because earlier on, he says, people used to call me Mr. Purity Test. Who? I don't.
Yeah.
Who? Your mom? Who called you that? I don't recall that. And I used to watch him back in the day. And again, here, I was the only one. Like, what? Dude, what is going on with you, man? Like, shut the fuck up. Jesus Christ. And then he, at another point, I don't know if you have it, he says, well, stuff happens when you pull out of a war.
Well, that is right now, I think. Yeah.
Is that, so you have that part?
I think he gets into that right now, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, so what... well, I guess there was no way he could have left in an orderly fashion, not like a fucking drunk stumbling out of the bar at 4 o'clock in the morning.
Yeah, they admitted a year later that they could have, in fact, done more to evacuate the people who wanted to leave before we pulled out, so that it didn't go down the way it did.
And what does that do for us later when we want to get allies? Not to mention the fact, not to go too far afield from this, but hey, man, you think the rest of the world didn't get the message when fucking Gaddafi went out with a knife up his ass? This is what happens when you make a deal with the United States to give up your ambitions for weapons of mass destruction. You wind up sodomized with a fucking knife, with Hillary Clinton laughing about it like the sick fucking maniac that she is. You think you're ever going to be able to convince another country to do that?
Right.
He came. We saw, he died.
There you go. All right, here we go.
Well, then it's like 3 people. And all these. Oh, I'm so anti-war. He pulls out of Afghanistan, and it gets messy because that's what happens when you pull out of wars. And all of a sudden, oh my God,
No, it gets messy when you pull out of 20-year occupations without giving the proper notice to the people you've been occupying for the past 2 decades, and don't give them the very least you could do, which is fair warning when it's about to go to shit again.
Well, and you get your people out, of course. Right. How are you going to convince anybody to work with the United States ever again? We did this to the fucking Iraqis, and we did it again to the Afghanis. We don't take care of the people who help us in these countries. Why would anyone do it? It's a death sentence.
Exactly.
I thought that was actually a good moment for the left. I saw a lot of consensus. Good on you, because we almost resented and kind of were enjoying the extent to which he was getting, dogpiled by the mainstream media, and we were the only ones defending him. So I would quibble with that a little bit.
But I didn't see much defending him. I really didn't.
Kyle, what people are responding to, if I can offer this, is not the idea that you are accurately describing advancements, good things that Joe Biden is doing. I think you could also say Obama did some good things.
No, Biden is way better than Obama, not even close.
That's not the point I'm making. Okay. It's not that one is better than the other. You could also sit here and say Obama did good things. Now, the way you bristled at me saying that, I could say, oh, why won't you just acknowledge that Obama did good things? The same way that you're saying that leftists won't acknowledge, they bristle when you acknowledge that Biden did good things. And it's because we have different standards and we're making different kinds of comparisons.
But that's not my issue, because they're not even acknowledging the good things, is my point. I have a list of 47 things here, and I've heard nobody talk about any of them.
But let me get to the core of this point. The reason that people are frustrated with that kind of analysis is because it's been used for so long by liberals to justify why people shouldn't be asking for more. I'm not saying that that's what you're doing.
You're being too nice. And she was too kind at various points throughout this interview. She was trying to be diplomatic because that is exactly what he's doing. I mean, that is textbook. Like, she hit the nail on the head. Yes, these are the kinds of arguments that liberals have used to convince people that they ought not ask for more. That same thing comes up again and again throughout this. Let's hear some more.
But if you bring up something like student debt, when the consensus of all of the student debt experts that I've talked to on my podcast, people from the Debt Collective, the Asher Taylors of the world, the legal experts I brought on, is that there was a path toward doing this, to canceling all student debt, that would not have been stymied by the Supreme Court. The same authority that Donald Trump used to enact the student debt moratorium, which has been ongoing until beginning of this month for the last 3 years, was the same authority that he could have canceled all student debt with a stroke of a pen. He chose not to do that because he decided to means test the program. He circulated those documents. I got one in my inbox last August, I believe it was, to see if you qualify for student debt. It was a very easy form. But when he did that, that started the clock for people to be able to challenge it in court, which what 6 states did. 2 of them were successful, and now here we are today. Not only did he decline to do the unstoppable mechanism to actually cancel all student debt, he additionally chose to use a legal authority, which when many legal experts said was the most vulnerable one. So you're now saying,
no,
he could have used the Higher Education Act.
He did. He did. He
could have done that in the first instance.
But he didn't, and now he tried it again through the Higher Education Act. The idea that it's a conspiracy, he doesn't want to actually cancel it. No, he appealed the case like 4 or 5 times. And then at the end of it, when the Supreme Court said, no, you can't do that, he said, fuck you, I can. And he did the Higher Education Act. That's exactly.
No, he didn't.
So why do my student loans start up again next month?
Exactly. Look, this is one of those points that was just absolutely outrageous. He acts like he signed the new executive order canceling student loan debt, invoking the Higher Education Act. I did a whole 10-minute presentation on this where I laid out the exact timeline of how everything happened. Okay, I don't have to get into complete detail in the interest of time. I'll be very, very brief. He was given a memo in April of 2021 saying use the Higher Education Act. He sat on that memo for 16 months and then used the HEROES Act. So he sat on that memo for 16 months and then used the wrong justification to cancel student loan debt, $10K or $20K per borrower, depending on your circumstance, right? Then that got held up in court until, what was it, July of this year, where the Supreme Court struck it down. Biden came out and said, okay, now we're going to use the Higher Education Act, but it's going to take longer this time. Longer than the 16 months it took you to do the first one? Well, guess what 16 months from July 2023 is? It's November 2024, which means he's not signing another executive order using the Higher Education Act until after Election Day at earliest. He likely will not even do it during the lame duck, which means the next time he's going to do that is into 2025, when he's in all likelihood not going to be in office anymore. So for you to say that he did it, he solved it, is absolute nonsense. And some people came at me on Twitter over this by saying, well, he did invoke the Higher Education Act to cancel $39 billion worth of student debt. That affected 800,000 people who had already been paying for 20 years. That is not the broad-based student debt cancellation that is in question during this argument. What they're talking about here is the broad-based cancellation for 44 million borrowers. That is not happening before the 2024 election, according to Joe Biden himself, because Joe Biden himself said it's going to take longer this time than last time, and last time it took 16 months. So this is just an outrageous lie. And as Russell said, if he planned on canceling that debt, then why would he restart payments? Why? The level of gaslighting from this fucking prick is unbelievable, and it's especially unbelievable considering that he's sitting across the table from someone who obviously knows her shit when she's talking about this issue. That's why I kept that big monologue in. You're going to try and gaslight Briahna Joy Gray on this topic? She just gave you a 2-minute monologue demonstrating she knows enough to see through this, and you're going to try this anyway? It's just incredibly disrespectful on top of everything else I just said.
Well, this is what you were saying before. What you really feel watching this is this guy does not have the intellectual firepower to be at the table with these 2 women. He doesn't belong there. He's not smart enough to be in this conversation. He keeps going back to dumb points that are easily disproven, and he seems to actually believe them and think that these arguments are smart. I mean, really, they do keep it's like when you have that stupid person in the conversation at the party, you know, and the two people they throw in their thing, and the other two people try to be polite and let them talk. They go, and then they continue what they were saying in the real conversation. That's how this whole thing plays.
After what we wanted him to do, then he does it, and people go, "Oh, that's not good enough."
And it's like,
he didn't do it. You're a liar. You're lying. He didn't do it. You think you're going to get away with that sitting next to Briahna Joy Gray, who's been on this issue for years? It's outrageous.
Kyle, what we wanted him to do was first and foremost just cancel the student debt.
I expected him to do nothing on student debt. This is the point I'm trying to get across to you, is that I expected nothing from Biden, and he did way more than I expected.
And that is an incredibly obnoxious point, that you expected him to do nothing, and because he is exceeding your basement level expectations, we ought to be impressed. Hey, motherfucker. You are worth $45 million, which means I do not care about your expectations. It is outrageous for these people. Let's say the reports are wrong. Let's say she's not worth $40 million. Let's say she's worth $5 million, right? Let's say they're just wildly off. The point is, you're a couple of millionaire podcasters saying that because Joe Biden exceeded your expectations, that working people are supposed to be impressed by that and vote for him? The arrogance of that is unbelievable. And that is what comes through in this conversation more than anything, is the blindness to their class privilege. I know you say Bree has it. She does, and she acknowledges it. That's the difference. You got these two sitting here as if working people are supposed to be impressed that Joe Biden exceeded Kyle Kulinski's expectations. What the fuck does that have to do with anything? With anything?
Well, and this is what I keep saying. If you're going to go in this direction, if this is where you're going to go, what's your justification for having a show in this space? Like, this is a conversation you'd watch on Meet the Press, right? That's some Joan Walsh shit. Joe Biden, I didn't expect much. You know, I wasn't crazy about him as a senator, but he's really performed better than I expected. And the question is why people don't see that, right? This is fucking CNN shit. So, like, why should you be here? What are you doing here? Like, both of you. What are you doing here?
Let's be honest about that.
It's not about your expectations. We have different expectations.
Of course I'm going to talk about it through my expectations. I'm me.
But let me
That's the point. You're you. You're a rich man. Your expectations do not mean a damn thing.
And very evidently so now with the fucking, like, listen, dude, just even, this is what's blowing my mind. Just even the fucking show business of being a fucking left podcaster. How the fuck are you walking around dressed like this? Jesus Christ. You don't think it undermines his credibility when he's got more fucking rings than a mafia capo?
Right, exactly. Here we go.
This conversation a little bit, because what we really have is a tactical disagreement. We could quibble about student loan debt. We could quibble about all kinds of aspects of the Biden administration. All of us would like him to do more. There's no doubt about that. But hold on a second. Our political aims are ultimately very similar. But I do think the student loan debt example is instructive, because it shows what has been effective in terms of securing real gains versus what has been ineffective.
It hasn't been effective. We just demonstrated it hasn't been effective. He has not signed the executive order canceling $10,000 to $20,000 worth of student debt for 44 million people. He has not. And he almost certainly will not.
It would be canceled, or be the subject of a court case. Neither of which is
subject of the court case. Or if they really intended to do it, they would suspend repayments until they did it. Because logically, why would you restart payments if you're planning on canceling them? Because if you're going to cancel it anyway, then any payments between now and when you cancel it are payments that you are admitting yourself politically should not have had to happen. So that's political suicide, right? I mean, it's just so obvious the game that is being played here. All right, that's clip one. Clip two is about the spoiler effect and how if Cornell ruins it for Joe Biden, then the left is going to be smeared. And isn't that terrible? So here we go.
Because they normally break out the masseuses and the caviar when the left shows up.
Right, exactly. All right, here we go.
to the extent that you think that Cornel West can ruin Biden's chances, isn't it Biden's responsibility to find those votes, not among disaffected third partiers who don't owe him anything anyway, but the tens of thousands and millions of disaffected Democrats who aren't going to vote for him? We've all talked about this together. In Wisconsin, in 2016, there were 88,000 registered black voters who voted in 2012 who declined to vote in 2016. That's like 2 or 3 times the margin by which Hillary Clinton lost in that state alone. And yet we're sitting here talking about whether or not Cornel West is going to pull some third-party voters away from the Democratic Party?
It's the difference between what I would love to happen and the reality that we have experienced now. I mean, we tried it before in 2016. It did not help.
What did we try in 2016?
The third-party effort. Jill Stein was not a spoiler. It is not those voters' fault who voted for you, like you guys that voted for Jill Stein.
But she got blamed anyway.
But she got blamed.
And then the left was further marginalized as a result of it.
So I don't see the connection. If I did, I would love to vote for Cornel West. It would feel way better to vote for Cornel West. I share his politics almost 100%. But I don't see the connection between voting for Cornel West and achieving any of the aims. And I see a much more direct connection between protecting the Biden National Labor Relations Board and allowing this little budding, exciting, amazing, potentially transformational labor movement to actually grow. Whereas if Trump gets reelected, which is, listen, it's the fact, based on how the Democratic Party is going to respond to Cornel West's election bid, it is more likely that Donald Trump gets elected with Cornel West in the race. And that, to me, is a massive loss because we know what his record is. We know what his National Labor Relations Board was. We know who his labor secretaries were and how they were engaged in all this union busting. And so I see a much more direct connection between that moving the ball in our direction than, Cornel West getting 5% and either his candidacy not really mattering at all or being used once again to, smear the left and marginalize the left and say these are just the people that are interested in getting Trump elected.
So to that second point, I'm just going to be honest. Not only do I not care about arguments that the left is going to be smeared, I think it's silly because no matter what we do, the left is going to get smeared. Bernie won Nevada, and it was, oh my God, we're going to decapitate people in Central Park.
Exactly.
It is, I think, deeply unrealistic to expect that there's ever going to be a left movement that genuinely challenges power in this country that's not going to be smeared. And if you are choosing your political strategy on the basis of what's going to get you a pat on the head from MSNBC, I know that's not what I don't mean to mischaracterize you. But
no. Go for it. You had it right the first time.
You're not mischaracterizing her at all. That's exactly what they're saying.
Diplomatic with them. I mean, you can see at many points watching this that, they have a personal relationship. And I think that's part of what's going on there. Although past a certain point, Kyle is so fucking insulting and condescending that she does start to bristle. But even by the end, you can see she tries to kind of make the piece more. You can see like this is complicated because clearly they have some kind of a friendship that's getting very strained. I mean, that's what I read in the body language of this interview.
Well, yeah, it seems like that, especially since, some of what Bri has posted on Twitter since this exchange here. But, she did not need to pull her punch there. That's exactly what they're saying. That is word for word my interpretation of what they're saying. They're saying that, okay, we can have a left movement, but we have to stay on good terms with liberal media, or else we're going to get smeared and it's going to hurt our movement, hurt the left. The left was smeared. The left was marginalized.
How?
What left? This is what left is not going to be marginalized? What left movement with any teeth is not going to be smeared by the media or by the Democratic Party brass?
You're not getting smeared. Look, you had AOC protesting in the office, smeared.
Right.
You have AOC doing sunscreen, Jen Psaki foot rub. That's how you don't get smeared. What does that do for us? That's not a left movement. That's putting people in power who are going to get a nice fucking pension. That's all that is.
Exactly. By the way, folks, does anybody hear any Empire State of Mind coming through my microphone? Because my neighbors were blasting music downstairs. And I not only do I not want it to distract from the experience, but I don't want this whole video to get a copyright claim because of my neighbor's music. as long as nobody can hear it. This microphone is pretty good. I changed a setting on the mic so it doesn't pick up background noise as much, but I just wanted to, as long as nobody hears it, then I guess we're good.
That is
But I'm
naive.
Listen, that's fine, and I agree with you. Left is going to be smeared, but the question is, what is actually going to move the ball forward?
I'm confused by why
and
you
I just don't,
Matt.
Because I don't see...
Because policy is all that matters at the end of the day.
I don't see how Cornel West getting 5% and helping to reelect Trump ends up with things going in a better direction.
Like that, Krystal? He gets 5%, and then the Green Party, a third party effort, it gets stronger and more well-funded and more able to compete in future elections.
Until we have ranked choice voting, there is no even 1% viability for them. Can you admit that? Can you acknowledge that?
Okay, now she makes the point, a version of the point that I've been making a long time, which is good. So I will not, I could take this portion of the show off from explaining how you have to vote for third parties if you want ranked choice voting.
Till we get ranked choice voting, no third party has any chance in hell. You agree with that, right?
Who do you think has been doing most of the ranked choice? Who do you think?
I'm not going to answer it. It's a simple question.
I'm going to answer it in my own time and my own words,
Just so fucking obnoxious. Okay, so now she gets a little. Here we go.
She's not going to answer. Yeah, you got the Harvard lawyer there, genius.
Exactly.
That's right. It's a simple question.
I'm going to answer it in my own time and my own words, Kyle, respectfully.
It's a simple one. The ranked choice voting thing, if we get ranked choice voting.
I go around, I do a lot of podcasts, and I don't know what's going on right now. It might be the phase of the moon. We had the double moon last month. But I'm getting a little frustrated with feeling shouted down and disrespected in every single space that I go into. I got to say, I promise I'm going to answer your question, Kyle. Sit tight. I got it coming for you.
I'll sit tight.
Who do you think has been doing the bulk and the best funded ranked choice voting advocacy in terms of getting on ballots and getting it passed in the United States of America?
Third-party voters.
The Libertarian Party.
So then what the fuck? How can you answer that question? I'm astounded he even answered that question the way he did. Because by answering that question, he's just exposing how full of shit he is. If you know that third-party voters and third-party candidates are doing a better job moving the ball down the field towards, universal ranked choice voting.
By the way, I know it's a long shot, but if we ever want Bri on this show, she'll never forgive us for that freeze.
For what? Oh, this freeze? I don't think it looks too bad. We've had worse freezes for people. But how he can say, oh yeah, no, I acknowledge that actually third-party voters and third parties are actually doing more to advance ranked choice voting than Democrats. How he can admit that he knows that while still parroting the line, well, you can't vote for third-party candidates until we get ranked choice voting. How does that not expose how full of shit your entire premise is? Like, I don't get how you could even admit that and expect to have any credibility on this transparently bullshit point, as she pretty much tears down right here. So here, we'll get the freeze off.
I like the Green Party. I'm no fan of the Libertarian Party, but for obvious reasons, they were enormously better funded than the Green Party. And they, as a consequence, have been able to make much greater gains and actually getting ranked choice voting passed around the country. What I'm saying is that there's a tangible material benefit to getting more money for a Green Party, whatever third party happens to be, but right now all we have is the Green Party for obvious reasons. Getting them more money to do the work across the country to advance third parties, ranked choice voting rather, is exactly the goal that you're articulating. So yes, I do see a direct connection between your goal, your stated goal of getting ranked choice voting and voting for the Green Party. You know who's not going to fight for ranked choice voting? The Democratic Party.
Yes.
Here's my point. There's not even a 1% chance or a 0.1% chance of Cornel West winning unless or until we get ranked choice voting. So I have to be honest.
That's not what she. Go ahead.
It's just such circular logic. She just made a very well-constructed point that without empowering third parties, you don't get ranked choice voting. He comes back at her with, well, if you empower third parties, you won't get ranked choice voting. What the fuck is he even talking about? It's like he's not even in the same conversation. He's not smart enough to follow
listening.
What she just said.
Yeah, no, it sounds right there that he was not listening to anything that she just said. And that was another theme of this conversation. She'd go on a monologue and he'd go back to his same point as if she did not say anything. Characteristic of a shit lib, by the way. What do we always talk about? The liberal cat stare, how you can make a point and they just will not know how to address it. So they just act like you never said anything. That's exactly what that was right there. He did not address a single thing that she just said.
I feel like it's self-disenfranchisement to really like put all your effort into third parties before we get ranked choice, putting the cart before the horse, in my opinion. That's my point.
Astounding how she just explained to him, and he apparently agreed that third parties have been more effective than the two major parties at actually forcing ranked choice voting through as an issue. Yet he still comes back to that response.
Like, I understand your critiques of Joe Biden very well. Many of them, if not all of them, I basically share. What I don't understand is just simply a tactical question of how focusing on a third-party effort helps gets us towards the goals that we share. That's the piece that, to me, recent history proves it has the complete opposite effect, whereas we do see actual progress that is possible made through the Democratic primary process. And I know you accept that. Like, you're not a Marianne hater. I'm not putting that on you whatsoever.
Marianne. No, she loves Marianne.
I don't understand.
Hey, case closed. Case closed.
I told you I left that in.
Mary Ann. I love Mary Ann, okay? So I don't want to hear it.
Right, exactly.
How risking the reelection of Trump and allowing a Trump union-busting NLRB to quash what is the most hopeful thing happening in American politics, which is the labor movement. I don't understand how that moves us forward. Like, that just doesn't compute for me.
Well, for one, I'd say, and I don't mean to at all minimize the value of this latest ruling, but
so the ruling that they're talking about was a ruling at the end of August where the NLRB ruled that if management interferes with a union campaign, that they basically have to recognize the union absent a formal vote, that if a majority express support absent a formal ratified vote, then that union must be recognized and that management must agree to allow labor collective bargaining rights, basically. So that's the ruling. All right. So just to bring everybody up to speed on that, let's play a little more.
Have been heartened by the energy and the gains made by the labor movement prior to that. Over the last few years.
Which were enabled by the Biden NLRB. I mean, there were keys. The workers get all the, listen, they do the work. I'm not trying to take anything away from them. But there were key decisions that were made in the Starbucks organizing drive in particular, in the Amazon labor union drive as well, that enabled those workers to do their thing. That wouldn't have happened under Trump.
Okay. Very quick point I want to make here. If you are going to say, right, that because of this NLRB ruling and because of Biden appointees to the NLRB, that we must vote for Joe Biden, what you're basically saying is that the Democrats can screw us over as much as they want, break as many promises as they want, abandon as many people as they want. As long as they give us good NLRB appointments, we have to vote for them anyway. That's basically what you're saying, is that if they give us one thing, secure one victory, right? Even if I concede that that's an earth-changing victory, which I really don't concede that it's an earth-changing victory, because ultimately, if you're going to have a revolutionary left movement, workers are going to have their hands, their feet, and their guts, and they're going to have to engage in all kinds of extra democratic actions like wildcat strikes in order to usher in the kind of transformational change that we actually need. But even if I were to grant you that, yes, better Biden's NLRB than Trump's, what you're saying is that as long as you give us a good NLRB council, you can fuck us as often and as hard as you want in every other respect. And this is what every left commentator who advocates falling in line behind Biden always refers to. You have Ben Burgess saying that when he votes for Biden, it's only because of the NLRB. Okay, well then every politician, every party has to pick one issue, right? One issue, and that's it. That's all.
Right. Yeah, a couple things there. One, okay, so what if the trade-off is your freedom of speech? because it very well is when you're talking about this Democratic Party. When you're talking about a Democratic Party that would put those fucking disgusting fucking McCarthyites, Plaskett and Schultz, as their face for the Jim Jordan board. What do you think they're going to do about speech and tech censorship with another term? That for me is actually, for me personally, it's much more important than the NLR people. Much more important than that. So if we're talking about one issue, that's my one issue. And that completely cancels out anything regarding that. Beyond that, it says quite a lot. Kyle goes down, I don't know if we're going to show this, he goes down this laundry list of stuff that Democrats were able to get in Wisconsin or Michigan. Which state was that? He was running down that the Democrats have control.
That was Minnesota.
Minnesota, and he's running down this list. You know, it's interesting you had to fall back on, like, not Joe Biden to defend Joe Biden. You had to go to
exactly right. The Minnesota Democratic Party.
Rather than to talk about what Joe Biden did. The fact that you have to keep falling back on this, that kind of makes the case that Bree is making. What the fuck has he done?
Right.
If this is all you got, and clearly it pretty much is, because it's what you keep going back to, and you had to lie about student loans, so that doesn't count, right? I mean, you just
of course
about it. So this is it. Okay, well, there are so many other issues, and Bree, to her credit, brings this up. World War III, how about that? And Kyle's response to that was ridiculous. In the same smarmy way he's been with her throughout this interview. Well, I think Trump's a lot more likely to start World War III.
Exactly.
I think he's a lot more likely. Why?
Right.
Why exactly do you think that? And then he starts saying shit about, well, he was much more antagonistic with Russia. He put troops up by the border. Now, I don't know exactly what he's referring to, but there's a pretty infamous clip of soon-to-be friend of show, Rachel Maddow, saying, she's coming on, folks, no, I'm kidding, of her saying, well, we can find out now if the American presidency is an op. Is Donald Trump troops back from the border? So if he put the troops there, what was that segment about? Clearly we had troops there. And she was trying to put him in this impossible box where if he decided to down tensions with Russia, it would be de facto proof that he is secretly a Manchurian candidate, right? That was a very safe way to try to manipulate our foreign policy, by the way, Rachel. Thank you for that. So did he put them back at some point? Did he well, you guys kind of forced his hand to have to take a much harder line with Russia than I think any of us believe he wanted to. Does anyone believe he wanted to take a hard line with Russia? You know, there's another thing. These people want to have it every which way. He's a Russian agent, or he was too hard on Russia. Like, which is it? Which is it? Both? I mean, usually when you watch these guys talk about this, it depends on what's convenient to their argument.
Yeah, no, indeed. And I didn't clip that one for this, but yeah, that was definitely worth mentioning. Like I said, we could have really watched this whole thing. But here's the next part. Who do you want to win? Who did you want to win in 2016, and who do you want to win now?
Let me ask you this, because I feel like this is a better way to put it. Forget about voting. Voting's irrelevant, right? Let's just say it's election night 2024. It is all of our worst nightmare, Biden versus Trump. Not voting, but that night when you know it's going to be Biden or Trump winning, are you sitting there like, yeah, of course I would prefer Biden win over Trump?
Honestly,
it's like 50-50.
I don't care.
Okay. All right. That's an answer.
It's not my party.
That's an answer. It's an answer.
Radical, and people are going to be very upset with me. I don't care. I
think
care. That's
there will be people who agree with you. I don't think you.
I know.
Yeah.
They're my audience. And I have come to this position after talking with, I got to say, I loved Colin. I'm sad that they're shutting it down. But part of the reason I loved it is because I would talk to people who were calling me. I would hear their doors dinging in the background because they were doing food delivery, or their EMTs, or they're like, and this gets characterized as a privileged position that you don't care who wins, Trump or Biden. My experience is the people who have been taking this position, this is just anecdotal, tend to be people are the lower end of the economic spectrum.
Bingo. Exactly.
Yep.
Exactly.
Yep. No, she got it. She got it.
And that is a very important point to make. And it's a very important point for somebody like Briahna to make. It's very insightful because someone in her position might not realize that, hey, you know, people are calling into my show expressing these opinions, and then I hear a doorbell ring because they're dropping off food while they're working. The people who don't care whether Biden or Trump wins are the people who have divested from the system, and that is the ultimate divide here between people who are invested in the system and people who have divested from the system. That's the really that's the overarching sort of thematic context in which this debate takes place. Kyle and Krystal are invested in America. They're rooting for the country. They believe that the country can be saved and that the system can be salvaged. And many of us disagree with that, which is why the prospect of a return to power for Donald Trump is not frightening. And I think Briahna did a good job articulating it there.
Well, and this is why I say I don't understand why they have what they're doing in this space, because their argument are typical out of touch suburban liberal arguments, right? Well, you know, you can afford these kinds of politics. People who signed up with the Bernie campaign that you made your careers on, which a lot of people in this space made their careers on as podcasters and YouTube hosts, it was about rejecting that kind of politics. And Kyle and Krystal and everybody here, man, they've all done these segments about how the old liberal order has failed the country and how it's failed to help. I mean, Krystal still does plenty of segments like that. So does Sagar, for that matter. So what part of this are you not getting? Take no for an answer. What part of this system is so broken that people who are not in your privileged position don't feel any investment in it, and they don't feel obligated to save it? Quite the opposite. They want to burn it down. And she, Bree at one point says, I'm sympathetic to accelerationist arguments.
Well, we're going to get to that in just a moment.
Who feel like their lives aren't meaningfully different under a Trump versus a Biden, and who would rather rock the boat and throw a monkey wrench in the machinery if there's even a fracture of a sliver of a chance that it has some outcome other than what we've been experiencing for their entire lives.
Fair enough. You gave a direct answer, so I respect it.
The other thing I would say, though, because you said you're basically an accelerationist. Like, you think things need to get better in order for them to get worse.
I feel,
worse in order
given
for
my
them to get
own
better.
class privilege, I am reluctant to personally put those wheels into motion, but I very much respect particularly people who, like I just was talking about, who do feel that way. I think that's a legitimate perspective. I feel like it's not my place to say, let's make the world burn, because I'm going to be okay.
Let's make the world burn. That sounds kind of similar to a certain thing that I said to a certain, well-meaning PMC left writer. That's what it's about. It's not about making the world burn. It's about establishing the stakes for different groups of people. And it's about telling PMC types like Krystal and Kyle, no, you can't have your nice incrementalist liberalism, okay? You can't have that. You either have to usher in the kind of big picture change that we need, or else we are not going to allow you to enjoy a nice country with a nice government anymore. We will allow conditions to deteriorate if we do not get the kind of solidarity that we need to make transformational change in our lives. That's what it's about. And so the recognition of that on her part is impressive. And forget it. No chance whatsoever that it's going to get through to, Ken and Barbie over here. Like, no way. But that was a very, very strong point.
Yep.
All right, let's go.
way. But I am open to that perspective.
Colors your view and how you approach these things and why you wouldn't really care whether it's Biden or Trump.
Yeah, I mean, I remember the night of 2016. I wasn't. I don't know. How did you guys feel? I wasn't personally devastated.
So,
I felt
that's a
in
great
some
question.
weird
Let me
way
answer.
vindicated.
That's a very.
This is what we had been telling them was going to happen the whole time.
So I agree with you completely about 2016, right? And I voted for Jill Stein in 2016. 2020. I didn't vote for Biden.
Right.
I didn't vote for anybody. It was sort of like, no, seriously, I think they're roughly equal. I think Biden's around the edges better, but I thought he was going to be as conservative a president as he was a senator.
Right, but it doesn't matter to you because you don't have the same stakes as the people who she was talking about, and it's the complete opposite of how it's presented, where the privileged people are the ones who don't care, right? Because they can afford either outcome. It's actually the opposite. In Brie's experience and my experience, it's actually the least privileged people who are the least engaged. That's why most poor people don't vote at all, right? That's why the electorate is a bunch of normies, because the people who are invested in the outcomes are people who feel they stand to benefit from one outcome over the other, i.e., Kyle. Well, I had low expectations for Joe Biden, and so the fact that he put a good guy as the counsel of the NLRB means that he's exceeded my expectations, and therefore I'm going to vote for him. Right? It's just a game. It's just a game for them. Yeah.
Well, sure. Well, they think that they're really great people because they're rich, but they care so much. They care so much about the workers and the people who aren't as privileged as themselves. You know, it's aristocracy. You know, it's very rare that you've really had aristocracies that don't see themselves as tribunes of the people. Right? We love the people. Right? We shower gifts upon the people. So you know they feel like you know they're fighting against their class, right? They're class traitors, but they have no interest in really upsetting the system. And look, this is nothing new. This is what you'll see on Meet the Press or MSNBC or CNN. I just don't know what they're doing here at this point. Like none of these arguments would be out of place on any of the cable news channels that your channels are supposed to be a reaction to. They used to be. They used to be a reaction.
No, exactly. This is absolutely.
But now you adopted exactly the point of view of that media. You developed your whole channels and presence in this space on the premise that you're not going to make these kinds of facile arguments for the Democrats. And now here you are, not dipping your toe, but just all the way there to the point that if you were invited on as a guest on the roundtable portion on Meet the Press this weekend, there's nothing you're saying here that would raise an eyebrow. Nothing.
This was really just an absolutely maddening display on their part. And we have one more segment that we're going to get to here. This is going to be a sound drop. Krystal, is Biden better than Obama? Right? I mean, that's because that's really rich. Here we go.
Do you think that Biden is better than Obama?
I'm open to that argument. But again,
who cares?
My fundamental, I don't. What purpose does that serve?
Exactly.
I think it's everything, in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, for me,
why does it mean everything? If it means everything, you're telling on yourself. You're saying that this is just a parlor game, right? Well, if he's better than the last Democratic president, if that's where you set the bar, that is indicative of how little you have at stake in these outcomes.
Well, and she keeps trying to get them throughout this to answer the question of, you know, which I think all of us who are post-duopoly have asked at some point. Well, so where does it stop? Where does it stop? I often, to illustrate that, I'll point out Richard Nixon, you could argue, was to the left of Bernie Sanders. And he was the arch conservative of his day, right? He was he was looking into universal basic income. He proposed a Medicare for all system that was more generous than Obamacare. Ted Kennedy killed it because he wanted something better than that. Little did he foresee the Reagan Revolution making any move towards that impossible. He created the EPA. I mean, Sanders never even mentioned UBI. I never heard those words out of his mouth. So that tells you how far we've gone. Richard Nixon was the right-winger of his day. And in some respects, at the very least, his policies were to the left of anything Bernie Sanders was proposing. So that gives you an idea of how far we've fallen. Can you imagine what it would look like if we continue in this trajectory? You're going to wait until W looks like a liberal?
Right. Yeah, exactly. Well, it's funny because Krystal actually poses a certain question to Bree that she answers very interestingly in this last clip.
That's like, is the person going to do good things that move us in a better direction? Especially, I brought up labor unions a million times, but for me, that's really central. Or are they not?
But that's not the question.
I guess my question
that's
for
not
you
the question.
is...
The question is, what is at stake? Look, by this logic, if the question is, are the people who are going to... Look, they talk about the labor movement, right? NLRB. We have an auto worker strike that is looming, right? It could be in effect on the 14th, which is this week, right? The logic they're talking about, well, if you get good things and you move the ball down the field, isn't that good enough? By that logic, why would there ever be a labor strike, right? Look, Sean Fain is saying he wants a 46% pay increase for his workers. Let's say management comes back and says, we'll give you 15%. And he says, well, no, I'm going on strike. The logic that they're using here to try and convince Briahna to vote for Joe Biden is the same logic they could use against Sean Fain, saying, hey, they're offering you 15% more than you're getting now. Why would you go on strike? If you go on strike, you have to go without pay for the duration of the strike. So why not just take the 15%? That's better than you have now, is it not? So by that logic, why would any laborers strike? The reason they strike is because they say, we acknowledge there are certain gains we could take to the bank right now if we wanted to, but we're choosing not to because those gains are not sufficient to meet our needs. And so the fact that we're moving the ball a few yards down the field is not good enough, that we are not willing to sign on that line because it doesn't get us near where we need to go. That's the whole point of a strike. So if you're so concerned about labor, then why are you devoting so much time trying to convince Briahna Joy Gray to take not half a loaf, a slice of bread? Because you've only mentioned this NLRB as this magic reason. Oh, we got to vote for Joe Biden because of the NLRB. Oh, and I forgot, Afghanistan. Yeah, other real feather in his cap,
Well, and what's really amazing is, I don't know what the fuck Kyle's doing on his channel at this point. But Krystal, she still does really solid reporting on how people can't afford houses and things like that, and looming economic catastrophe and how bad things are for Americans. How can you not understand the implications of that? Like, if you spend as much time as you do, and she does, reporting on things like that.
Oh, yeah, of course. Yeah. No, I'm not arguing.
Follow it through to its logical conclusion. What do these people have to lose? Right? I mean, they feel, and Briahna tries to explain that. It doesn't get through. I mean, she does have her response to it, which is, I don't know how much of that you have in the clip. Basically, Krystal was like, well, if you burn it down, I feel it's less likely you get a left utopia than a right-wing nightmare. I feel like I don't feel like she's entirely wrong. I feel like what she's missing is you're given a choice here between rainbow fascism and the more traditional variety. Not fascism is not on the menu with these two power bases, right? Which is really one power base. It's two wings of one power base. So you could be the frog in the pot of boiling water and just get slowly cooked by this system, which is clearly where this is going. Or you can try to blow it up and see what happens. One, there's the prospect that something better will come of it. And this way, you're just slowly going to get cooked, and that's the only possible outcome of this system. That is what she's not getting.
Exactly. All right, here we go.
Is because you were sort of like, all right, let's acknowledge, sure, let's say Biden's 10 times better than Trump. Like, how much better would he have to be before you're like, okay, it's
That's a
not
good
just
question.
it's not just lesser evil. It's not
This
just
is a
vote blue
great
no
answer.
matter who. It's
That's a
actually
good
worth
question.
voting for this person.
He would have had to have done everything that he could have done.
Even Bernie wouldn't have done
And
everything
so
he could have done, in my opinion.
Okay, so she just gives a great answer, and then this idiot laughs. Oh, even Bernie doesn't do anything he could have done. Listen to what she says. Listen to what she
Knowledge.
says.
Sure, let's say Biden's 10 times better than Trump. Like, how much better would he have to be before you're like, okay, it's
That's a good
not just lesser evil. It's not just vote blue no matter who. It's actually worth voting for this person.
He would have had to have done everything that he could have done.
Even Bernie wouldn't have done
And
everything
so
he could have done, in my opinion.
Even in comparison,
What kind of statement is that?
I just think.
Wait a minute. I'm not saying he could have.
I'm not taking a shot at you. I'm just saying
Wait a minute.
I don't think politics,
I
even
wanna be
somebody like
clear.
Bernie who's principled, I don't think he
I'm
even
not
delivers
saying
on everything.
He has to fulfill miracles. I'm not saying he has to accomplish everything that he says he wants to do. I'm saying he has to have done
Everything he could have
everything he could have done.
You can do a lot as president. You can do a lot.
So this is the issue with Biden. Not that he didn't wave a wand and create Medicare for all, because we can all acknowledge that even if it were Bernie Sanders, that would have been an uphill battle. But what I choose to focus on my show, and what I really appreciate about reporting by people like David Sirota and The Lever, is that he exposes the gap between what these people have done and what was literally possible.
Exactly. That is the point. He would have had to have done everything he could have done. Not everything he says he wants to do on the campaign trail, because you can't do everything you say you want to do. But the point is, can he or did he try, make an honest effort to do everything he could have done? That's why that Build Back Better package looked promising at first, because we thought, okay, limitations being what they are, if they can do this, we can reasonably say that they have done the best they could in the moment. And not only did they not get that through, Biden never bothered to negotiate face-to-face with Joe Manchin to get that through, which means they did not make an honest effort to do everything they could have done. Again, subtlety completely lost on Kyle Kulinski. Well, even Bernie wouldn't do everything he could have done. No, Bernie wouldn't have been able to do everything he said he wanted to do, but there's a difference there. Did you do your best? And Biden has not even come close to even trying to do his best.
Yeah, and let's not forget the LBJ theory that LBJ would have pulled Manchin in the office and said, well, you know, your daughter's been up to some real funny things with that pharma company. We might have to look into that if you don't vote the way I need you to vote. Why not? Why not?
No, of course.
There was going to quit the party? Well, then we're going to investigate her double. Right. You quit the party, we're all over your daughter. Right? Like LBJ wouldn't have even hesitated to pull that fucking move. So, you know, a lot of these things, you know, as with the education move he pulled, he didn't want these things. He didn't want them to go through. This is the game Democrats play. We're wise to it at this point. And you can't, I mean, that's what Bria's saying. You can't make these arguments to us anymore. We're over it. We're done.
Please clap.